The Collinwood of parallel time, where Barnabas Collins finds himself confronted with a growing mystery. A mystery that seems to blur the line between the living and the dead. On this night, the powers of evil hope to fulfill one important part of their dark design, the destruction of Maggie Collins.
Maggie, you know my voice.
It was you!
Yes, I watch you all the time.
No!
You can't run away from me.
Then I'll stay and I'll fight you!
Fight me? When I've already won.
You haven't won!
Oh, yes, I have, Maggie. Quentin loves me, not you.
No, that isn't true.
But it is. Look in the mirror. Look at what you are. Go on. Look. A poor substitute. A gauche, awkward little girl who no one wants around here, especially Quentin. And look at me. Didn't you see the disgust on Quentin's face when you came down the stairs in my dress?
Stop it!
He doesn't love you. He knows now what a mistake he made. That's why he ran out.
No, I won't let
He can't bear the sight of you. And without his love, there is nothing for you to live for, is
Stop
there?
it!
Go to the window.
I won't listen!
Go to the window. Look down. It would be so easy, wouldn't it? To end everything quickly. All your suffering. Go on, Maggie. Let go. Fall. There's nothing for you to live for without Quentin's love. Nothing to live for when he has shut you out of his heart. Go on, Maggie. Let go. Fall. Living for, Maggie. Quentin doesn't want you anymore. He'll never stop loving me.
Stop! Stop it!
You cannot shut out the sound of my voice. Only death can do that. Why wait?
I heard someone scream. Who was it?
Oh, I don't know. It came from in there.
I can't. Oh, let me go! Let me go!
Maggie! Maggie! If you fight me, you'll take me down with you. Do you want me to die?
I want to die, that's all I want!
Mrs. Collins,
I'll handle this, Hoffman. Just leave us alone, please. Maggie, come away from the window.
I'm begging you, let me jump! I want to die! I have nothing to live for!
What do you mean?
Angelique, she told me herself that she'll never give Quentin up. That she's the only one that Quentin wants, and it'll always be that
I
way.
don't know what you're saying.
Yes, I do. Angelique told me so herself.
That's not possible.
I heard her voice, and she spoke the truth.
Maggie, listen to me. Angelique is dead. You just imagined all this.
I want to die. That's all I want.
If you jump, you'll make Quentin feel guilty. Do you want to destroy him too? come down from the window. Come with me.
I have nothing to live for. Nothing. Everything that she said was true. It was all true.
Maggie, my presence is in the portrait. Look at me.
She almost did it. She almost jumped from the window. Mrs. Stoddard heard her scream and came in and stopped her.
Oh, Elizabeth was always too meddlesome for her own good.
I know you don't agree, but it is better this way.
Maggie Collins should be dead.
And Quentin Collins would spend the rest of his life feeling guilty about her death.
I can handle his guilt.
You want them to separate of their own free will. Maggie will never stay with Quentin after what he did to her tonight. Now, you've won, but you just don't realize it yet.
Yes, I know. Still the image of Maggie lying on the stone beneath my window. Cold. It was not an unpleasant one. However, you are right. I have won, and that's what's important, isn't it?
Who is it?
Barnabas.
Come in, Barnabas. Is something wrong? What made you return so late?
Well, I was wondering about Quentin.
We'll come into the drawing room. I don't want to leave Maggie alone.
Does Quentin come back?
He'll never come back. As long as I'm here.
Are you all right, Maggie?
Of course she isn't. How could anyone be after an evening like this? I'll never forgive Quentin for running out like that. Never.
I was only thinking of Angelique. Remembering her.
I'm not interested in what he was thinking of. Here, drink this tea.
No, please.
Oh, please, Maggie. It'll make you feel better.
No, thank you.
Elizabeth is right. Drink just some of it. Perhaps it will help calm you.
Barnabas, would you stay with Maggie while I go upstairs and fix a place for her in my room? I don't want her to be alone tonight.
That's not necessary.
It won't take me long. You stay here with Barnabas and drink some bread.
I'll fix the fire.
Angelique promised she'd return.
Return.
She's kept her promise.
Oh?
I heard her voice tonight, but that wasn't necessary. For a long time, I knew that she'd come back.
You heard her voice?
Never mind. Just tell me the same thing that Liz told me. That it was the strain of the evening, the party.
Where did you hear her voice?
In her room, coming from her portrait. Telling me
Telling you what?
that she would never give Quentin up. Because she's the one that Quentin really wants. It's the truth.
Maggie. Angelique is dead.
Is she? Then why is she still here? In every corner of this house? These rooms are filled with her presence.
You mean that only her spirit is here?
I don't know what I mean. I know that this house is hers, and these rooms, and Quentin. Even Quentin is hers. She'll never let me have Quentin. Never.
In a way, Maggie, I believe you may be right. You may be more right than you know.
You make me feel like a little girl.
Does that mean you're feeling better?
I feel calmer.
Like the beginning.
No. No beginnings. It's only an ending. I've got to accept that.
You can't.
Tonight I wore a dress that belonged to Angelique. Quentin saw me in that dress. He saw so clearly the difference between us. Angelique and me. I don't blame him for getting angry. I don't blame him for running from the house and not coming back.
I do.
You shouldn't. It's not his fault that I'm not Angelique.
You must stop comparing yourself to her.
Will Quentin stop? Never. She's one, and I've got to accept that.
You mustn't.
I have no choice.
Maggie, you must not allow the dead to overcome the living.
Please. I just want to rest. I want to accept defeat. Please, don't make me fight anymore. I just want to rest.
Mr. Collins, I didn't know you'd come back.
I was waiting to hear from Elizabeth that Maggie was all right. It's been a very difficult evening for her.
Yes, so I understand. I won't interrupt your reading. Good night.
Hoffman, you were very close to the late Mrs. Collins, weren't you?
I was very devoted to her.
I've just been looking at this book that apparently belonged to her. Fascinating.
Mrs. Collins had a wide variety of interests.
Some of them most unusual,
She was a very unusual person.
and so I gather. I understand that that she even promised to return after her death.
Oh, she may have said it, but of course it was figurative. She was just talking about her love for Quentin, that her love was so great that it would survive even after her death. I don't think that's very difficult to understand.
What isn't difficult to understand?
Mr. Collins wanted to know if I'd ever heard your sister talking about returning after her death.
Well, I'm sure you did. Angelique was something of a romantic.
Romantic.
Mr. Collins has been looking at one of her books on witchcraft.
Now, Mr. Collins, surely you don't think Angelique's talk of returning from the dead had anything to do with witchcraft? Perhaps you yourself are the romantic.
Perhaps.
Hoffman, I noticed that one of my bedside table lamps has gone out. I wanted to do some reading. Would you see what you can do about it?
Certainly. Good night, Mr. Collins.
Good night, Hoffman.
You are a curious man, Mr. Collins. I see that book has caught your imagination.
Imagination? No, I wouldn't say that, but My interest, yes.
That's surprising. I find even the idea of the occult immensely boring.
Really?
I don't dismiss it entirely, but it does seem to me that to pursue it deliberately would be a waste of time.
Oh?
I don't mean this as a criticism of Angelique, but wouldn't you think that a really fertile imagination shouldn't have to resort to witchcraft for stimulation?
But what if it wasn't merely to stimulate the imagination?
Well, I can't imagine what other purpose it would have.
Or perhaps a purpose of a more concrete nature.
Oh, I see. Now you're returning to your notion that Angelique's interest was, sparked by a desire to return from the dead.
Possibly.
Oh, well, forgive me. I'm afraid a discussion of the witchcraft so late at night is positively ludicrous.
Perhaps. But there are still portions of this book that would be very much of interest to you.
I doubt it.
Well, the portions that I was just reading, the ones about the uses of fire in sorcery and witchcraft.
Oh, why should that interest me?
Well, if you remember, you mentioned to me last night your attraction to fire.
Well, if you remember, I said my attraction was purely aesthetic.
So you said. But it's my distinct impression that when I saw you sitting here looking at the fire, that you seem to have more than merely an aesthetic interest.
What are you implying, Mr. Collins?
Well, I'm merely stating my impression.
It's too bad you never knew my sister Angelique. She had a marvelous appreciation for the preposterous.
I am being preposterous. Well, if you'll excuse me, I would like to say goodnight to Mrs. Collins.
Do you think he knows?
No, but he definitely suspects.
That could be dangerous.
Now, how?
He could talk to Quentin.
Oh, Julia, keep in mind a few facts. Quentin and I have already been through the game of does Angelique live or does she not? And the game ended the night Alexis' body was destroyed. Anyone who tries to revive speculation will get himself laughed right out of column.
Well, suppose he finds a way to prove it.
Oh, Julia, had just the cure for your anxiety.
What?
Relax and enjoy the spectacle of Barnabas Collins trying to prove anything.
I just don't like it.
But you're forgetting one thing.
What?
Even if Mr. Collins does get a little too close to the truth, I have the means to deal with him. After all, he is only a human.
Yes. Yes, of course, how could I have forgotten that?
I didn't want to leave before I knew that you were all right.
Oh, she's feeling much better, aren't you, Maggie, dear?
I'm going to be all right.
Of course you will be.
What she really needs is a good night's sleep. Isn't that true, Maggie?
Has Quentin come home yet?
I haven't seen him. I don't think he has.
I'm quite sure he's all right, and you're going to be all right, too, Maggie. Barnabas, tell her she has nothing to worry about.
Maggie, whatever difficulties there are, we'll find a way of handling them. I'll just forget everything and rest. Good night, Maggie.
Good night, Barnabas.
Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night. What a fine man he is.
Yes.
Doesn't it mean something to you to realize you have friends who love you, who want to help you? It does, doesn't it?
Let me look into the eyes of Angelique and know the truth.
could I need, Julia? No. Good night.
Good night. I'll see you in the morning.
Yes, the morning of my new...
What's wrong?
Someone's watching me.
What?
I can feel someone looking at me.
There's no one here.
Looking, staring into my eyes. My eyes! They're burning! They're on fire!
Well, tell me what I can do.
My eyes are on fire! I can't bear it!
It's the eyes of Angelique I'm looking into. It is the truth of Angelique that I must know. Come closer to me. Closer. Closer.
My eyes! Stop looking at me!
Why? Because I see Angelique.
You know!
Yes, Angelique, I know.